Oh man, thanks for coming back with another album.
Thanks for having me. This is a treat to be here.
Like you do, you just tucked yourself away and made this beautiful body of work and waited till you were ready, didn't rush it and got it done. And then it's like, hey, I'm back, and everyone rejoices. But I feel with you, it's like you don't need, the Easter eggs of fanfare or any of that shit. You're like, I just love the work. Let me go to work.
That's very sweet of you. I made it pretty quickly, but not for any reason other than that it poured out and then it was done. I spent last year solely working on two projects. I was working on Billy's album all year, and I was working on the score of this an Apple TV show called Disclaimer that is about to come out. And that was like, both were kind of a full-time job, and so there was no oxygen at all to like work on any other artists or me or whatever. And then they both ended at like the exact same time. They both ended in December of 23. And I knew that I wanted to dive back into my stuff because it had been a couple of years. And the first album was made in a very lonely way. It was really just me in a room alone doing everything. And I feel fine about that album, but I don't feel like I love everything about this album and I only could have been made by me alone in a room. That was just kind of like how it happened. And I among the luxuries that I have, one of them is I'm friends with all these really talented musicians. And so I called some of my closest friends and I said, hey, I want to make an album, but I want to make it in a kind of an old-fashioned way, and I just want everybody to get in a room and
someone
jam.
else's room, someone else's studio.
Yeah, a
places.
bigger room than I have in my house. And so me, Aaron Forbes, Ricky Gourmet, David Marinelli, Lucy Healy, and Miles Morris, the drummer of a band called Bad Sons, got in a studio for a week and jammed. And I didn't know if, sometimes you're doing a part of a process that's like a precursor to what it'll actually be. Like, I was like, maybe this will be a warm-up. Maybe we'll just sort of have a good time and then I'll have a better idea of what I want to make. And we wrote something like half the record in the first week. And I was like, okay, great. And then we did another week 3 weeks later and wrote kind of the rest. And then we did one more week where we wrote like one more song. And that was the song for Cryin Out Loud. So it was sort of coagulated, but it was really like about 14 days of
And when
sessions.
you say you wrote those songs in that time frame, you came in with varying kind of ideas and themes and thoughts and journal entries, or it was like, no, we're just going to figure this out?
I have like a running forever note, like a grocery list in my notes app of titles and hooks and little things and whatever that is in my back pocket if I need it. But I would say 75% of the album was just on the day, what was feeling good, and then being inspired by that. The song Cleats, for example, I had that title and kind of what I wanted to say in that song rattling around. Like that was a thing that existed. And then when Ricky played the guitar part, I was like, oh, I'm gonna try this out over that. But a lot of the songs on this album, for Cryin Out Loud, the song example, like those just happened.
Fair play to you, dude. As somebody who really has made music in the most intimate of environments with very few people, comparatively to other artists and producers who get out there in the modern age. You sit in your bedroom, you choose carefully, you work with people carefully, and you and Billy don't let anybody in. To go into a room, a big room, even with people you trust and love, and hear Ricky play a guitar line and just be like, I think I'm going to just try something out. How did that feel?
It was so exciting. I mean, I think if I am a songwriter first, which is sort of how I've always felt about myself.
Versus what?
A producer first, or maybe an artist first, or I don't know. I think I really feel that being a songwriter is a big part of my identity underneath everything else. So the idea that I could sit and write a song alone, as I have many, many times, is not the intimidating thing. But I think when I think of myself as a producer, if I'm in a room with Billy, I'm really producing her as an artist, right? I'm really able to see what she's doing and maybe hopefully see what she's capable of doing beyond what she's doing and say, hey, you can take this further, whatever. If I'm in a room alone, it's harder for me to also be a producer.
Because Billy's getting the benefits of your experience as well as her own, whereas you're only getting your own.
Exactly. So to fill a room with other musicians meant that I could be a songwriter, but I could be producing everybody. I could be sort of reactive and say to Lucy, ooh, I love what you're playing there. maybe play a little bit more intensely on this chorus and say to the drummer, Miles, like, that part's great. And then maybe lay out here. You know what I mean? Just kind of directing in a way that
beautiful.
I wouldn't be able to do otherwise.
It's the most beautiful of modern stories if you think about it, right? The historians of music history will take a look at an artist like yourself who came out at a period in time where music and accessibility to technology and all that was possible was at your fingertips and in your bedroom or in your living room on a laptop. Look what you've achieved. You've scored probably or written a song that's ultimately become one of, an important part of one of the most iconic movie franchises of all time. You won the highest possible honor for that multiple times now. And I'm not trying to just give you your Wikipedia. There's a point to this. You've gone on and achieved incredible things. And yet this is the first time you've won Producer of the Year. And this is the first time that you've actually gotten into a room and been able to go, oh, that's cool. And you played that arrangement. It's amazing.
That's true. It's a little backwards.
No, it's actually incredibly forwards.
Sure, that's true. That's true. Yeah, that's totally true.
Why can't we break convention and why can't someone be honored and awarded for all these things just because they sit in a certain environment that seems intimate and demo-like to other people? You've made magic in there.
I think if you know how to do something, you're going to learn more from doing the different version of that. If I'd started out making records this way, then I'd go make a record alone in a room.
Yeah, you are restless. That's one of the things I love about you.
I just learned so much from it. Like scoring, I was talking about this with, I think, Blake Slatkin like 2 days ago about scoring. And I was like explaining to him that the scoring thing is like to compare like my album for me and scoring. Like my album for me is like basically the only person whose opinion is the kind of gatekeeper is mine, right? I feel good about it. I feel like it's done. I feel like maybe this song isn't my identity, whatever, and I scrap it or I put it on. For scoring, right? It's like on this show that's about to come out, it's Alfonso Cuarón, who I have so much respect for and I've known for a long time. And, he's showing me a scene that's like mind-blowing always. And I'm trying to make a piece of music that's like living up to that scene. And I'll spend 3 days killing myself over this piece of music. And then he's like, this is cool, but it's not, I don't think this is right for the scene. And first of all, it really keeps you like a student of the whole thing. It's like getting a pass-fail grade, which is cool. And the other thing that's so funny about it to me is like, if I make a song that doesn't feel right for Billy, I can always give it to some other artist. I can put it out. That's a kind of a songwriter's luxury. I've just made a piece of music that's like 4 minutes long that only goes under this specific scene that has this specific thing.
It's cooked.
And then we're like, I think that's not the right piece of music. And you're like, cool, I'm gonna burn. I'm gonna set my. It's like setting time on fire.
Neil Finn said that to me once. He said, "There's great joy in deleting something."
Yeah, it's kind of powerful, and you also have no time to throw a tantrum. You have to make another piece of, the deadline is still the same.
I've heard this story from a few other people who
do it again immediately.
Yeah.
So again, that all taught me how to do my album better, and I think doing my album, like it all just sort of like cross-pollinates.
Yeah, it's not a widely known common thread, but there is a small common thread that rolls through a particular type of individual who gets to make the transition from being popular recording artist to somebody who moves into that space of audio-visual scoring, composing.
Yeah. And
the first lesson that every one of you has told me that you were taught was, you don't get your way. It's a collaboration, and ultimately, it's in many respects, it's you have to serve the purpose.
Yeah, I mean, again, the other thing is that some of the stuff that I was doing surprised Alfonso and wasn't what his brief was, and then he loved it, and that was exciting. And then some of the stuff I send in a first draft, and then through our conversation, it gets so much better. So that's the other thing. It's like I'm always trying to make the best thing. I don't care if, it was my first try. Usually stuff isn't your first try. So
yeah, it's cool, man. You're way ahead of schedule on that. We're going to get back to the album in a second, but you are. I mean, you've really got your retirement plan figured out. I mean, at the end of the day, when this whole popular music thing, at some point you're just like, I can't be bothered even trying to keep up anymore. There's something really beautiful in an old age to be able to sit in the studio and just work quietly on the thing that you love anyway.
It's a craftsman's job.
Takes you out the thrash.
Yeah, it's true.
Different kind of thrash.
Yeah, true.
Okay, let's get into the details of this album a little bit more, my friend. It's only your second album, which blows my mind, and I had to remind myself I'm so accustomed to and in love with your songwriting, production, your style, your vocal. You know all this. This isn't faint praise. I tell you off the mic too. that I have to remind myself that really as bodies of work go, this is only your second album. It's your sophomore album.
Yeah, I mean, I've put a lot of singles out. I'm a singles guy. So there's probably 3 albums worth of songs floating around. But second long play.
When did the album title come to you?
So that was the final song that I wrote for the album.
There's always got to be a little bit of humor there, I think, with you, which I love.
Yes, for sure. I mean, that's an important part of it to me. As long as it's not forced, I want it to be a little funny. I mean, I always say Billie and I learned this lesson, I think, especially on her first album. But even before that, like, if you're going to make something dark or sincere, if you can be a little funny, the sincere dark parts are darker and more sincere.
Dude, the beginning of that debut album is the greatest humor dark dynamic moment.
Retainer out.
Takes the retainer out and then starts with the heavy shit.
Yes, but it's disarming. I think if somebody takes themselves so seriously all the time, it starts to like flatten out. You know what I mean? It's not as dynamic. And if you say a joke and then you say a thing that's devastating, I think it's more arresting. So
fine line, man. It's a fine line.
Yes,
you know
this
that
is true.
You know, between even undermining your own sincerity, it can happen. Just in the interest of trying to be sincere, you can go too far and be
so true.
All of a sudden, my sincerity got overlooked by my lack of sincerity.
I tried to be too ironic or sarcastic or something. It's very true. When I wrote that song, I liked that it was ambiguous, and I liked that it's like a sort of a exasperated. Like it's a thing you say when you're exasperated.
Yeah, because you put the exclamation mark on it. And by the way, there's not a lot of album titles with exclamation marks on it. There's a lot of question marks. There's not an enormous amount. I reckon it's quite a small pool.
Yeah, that's true.
Was it early on in the process? Did it give you some guidance, some sort of lane, some detail flesh to work towards?
Yeah, I did these 14 days with the posse, and then I took the files home, basically. Aaron Forbes engineered it, and so he'd do a kind of a rudimentary comp of a bunch of stuff, especially like drum comp. And then I'd take it all home, and I'd sift through, and I'd bring out stuff and mute stuff and process stuff, and then do tons of vocal layering.
Did you have to get your head around the fact that the drums sounded kind of bad? No, but I don't mean that they were played badly, but when you're in the studio in your own bedroom and wherever you're in your own studio,
and it's a sample,
and it's all processed, it's mixed, it's mastered, you get to make it. It's like, oh man, it's pretty much there. And then you take raw drums home, and you got to figure out what it's going to sound like in the future.
There's 2 things I'll say about that. One is that I have been home recording drums a little bit, and when I've been recording drums and I've been playing with my mediocre ass on the kit, I've been like, wow, this is rough. But on this album, I had this drummer, Miles Morris, who has been the drummer for a band called Bad Sons forever, and particularly their drums I've always loved. And again, it's true that drums on an album are pretty processed. They're compressed and they're EQ'd and they're shaped, whatever. It was pretty shocking how much it's that guy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The way that he hits a snare. I was like, that's the way that guy hits a snare. It's a little depressing because I have that snare. It doesn't sound like that when I hit it.
That's so true. You just basically set yourself up for like 5 ways I'm not going to be those people.
Yeah.
For 14 days.
Yeah, and also we they're compressed and whatever, but they were pretty raw. And when the album got sent to mix to John, I actually was like, the rawness is really appealing to me. And Miles is such a rock and roll drummer that I was like, especially with this album, I was like, if we Chris Lord-Alge these drums, they'll feel insane. Like he's such a powerful drummer that I was like, we got to dry it out a little.
The playing is really dynamic, but you're right. You captured the essence of what I love so much about when people really discovered the transition between analog and digital. There's a beautiful time in human history where drums just sounded rich and warm, and they weren't trying to sound like the room, but they weren't quite there sounding like someone else's room.
Yes.
And I feel very much like you captured the spirit of that on this record.
I'm so happy to hear that. It was a really fun process.
Strong FM vibes.
Yeah. That was the goal. I mean, I wanted it to have a real feel. Yeah. I mean, we're at a point where like you can't reverse engineer it. It's like you could go quantize everything and have the best loops of the best drummers on the best kits. It's like the whole reason to have a person in the room is to have it be a little fucked up.
Yeah,
that's the whole reason.
I'm glad you said that. That's coming from the artist, everybody. And I mean, listen, this debate was raging for about 3 months. about like, this development of AI into the world of the arts, and then everyone realized, well, hang on, there's a lot more bigger, important things that AI is going to impact than the arts. So let's just get back to making art, and when it's our time to have that conversation, we will. That's what I felt happened.
I don't think AI has even gotten super helpful yet, and I think it will in the music space.
I agree.
I think like to me, it's my generation's first time reckoning with like whatever the generation before us reckoned with when like a Lindrum happened or something. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't think it's going to replace it. I think it's going to be really helpful. Yeah. And then there's going to be weird ways to fuck it up and experiment. You know what I mean? I
agree. I was concerned about the data mining and the mapping and of the people's art forms and whatever. But I just think at the end of the day, when you want to make something, you make it for the joy of making it.
Yeah.
I think to your point, like you know more than anyone probably making modern music with a very small group of your contemporaries, how to make something from the modern pool of sounds and software and whatever you want to choose to make your music. You can make it sound so big now. You know how to transform it into something so out of that space into this space, yet you chose to go into a room with a bunch of people
and make it sound small.
And make it sound something else.
Not make small, it sound small,
but just intimate.
Yeah, intimate and understated was the goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, not over-processed, over-treated.
Yeah. What were you drinking? Were you eating? Was it a lifestyle? Was it a good time? Was it a good time?
No, everybody was a little over-caffeinated. The days were really short. The days were like noon to 5. They were so short. Because I think that the creative process is requires more kind of like sleep and rest. I think if I'd written the album and then we were going to record it, they would have been long, tedious days. Like, okay, let's do tons of drum takes and tons of guitar takes. But because we were all writing at the same time and it was very fluid, very reactive, really short days.
Let's put our best work in front, not our most amount of work. I feel like that's got to be a relatively new development for you because I know you've worked hard up to this point getting, not that, like you say, you don't equate hours with hard work, but I know you put the hours in is my point.
I've done a lot of hours. I'm pretty fast. Whether that's good or bad, I'm a fast worker.
What's that like for people who aren't as fast as you and need a little more time?
Probably frustrating. It's frustrating for me that everybody's slower.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And people who are slower make great work. So it's no criticism of that, but...
Yeah, that's got to be an interesting dynamic when you're in the studio, especially working with somebody or even working with Billy where it's like, I know there's something special here. I just need the time to figure it out. And you're like, but I know exactly where we got to go.
I've tried as I've gotten deeper into it, not maybe on my record because I didn't need to do this, but with Billy, for example, I think I maybe said this to you when we were talking to her of like, just because I have an idea more quickly doesn't mean that should be the idea, you know? And sometimes I'm like, I'm going to sit here for 10 minutes. Even though I've thought of my idea, I'll sit here and wait for her to come up with an idea and then we'll see which one's better.
Staring intently while they're trying to figure it out.
No, I play a little brick breaker on the iPhone.
Gosh, I listened to Family Feud and just before we even talk about whether it's what part of it is.
You know what it's about.
Of course I do.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, I just want to credit the song as an actual song.
Thank you.
I think it's my favorite composition you've written.
Wow. Thank you.
Certainly through your own
catalog.
filter. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
And up there with everything else as well. Fascinating subject to try to put through a song, especially at this point when you're not even close to being halfway through your life together.
Oh yeah.
And to capture a moment and decide to make it a collectible experience to honor that moment. And what are you, 27?
I'm 27. I wrote it when I was 26.
Yeah.
And then Billy, who that song's about, is 22.
So what's going on when you wrote it? Can you describe the experience and where you were and where it came from?
Yeah. I mean, I'd just come off of, I wrote that song like 10 days after the Oscars, and we'd just done this kind of like 3-month-long
exhaustive celebration
gauntlet of Barbie, which was like a huge honor and also stressful.
That's what I mean.
You know, stressful not in the sense of like we might win or lose an award, but stressful like we're performing every weekend. You got
to fit it into everyday life, into the rest of the thing you're doing.
I literally like a performance of a vocally challenging, very intimate song on the biggest, you know, award shows. So it was a kind of a stressful experience.
By the way, that's your sidebar this week. Then you got to get back out and do all the other things we're doing.
Well, then we got to finish our album or whatever it was. Yeah. So it was a stressful period. And again, like I find that sometimes in those scenarios, I'm really observing Billie. Obviously, like I'm her teammate, but my lift feels much lighter. Me sitting there playing piano, singing harmonies. I'm not the primary vocalist. But yeah, I mean, that song is about, I think, more than maybe anything else, thinking about my relationship with her, devoid of all of the sort of other stuff. Like when we started making music together, we were like right at that place. I don't know what your kids' relationships are, but like we were right at that place where like we've always loved hanging out. We were right at that place where we were about to not have almost any reason to. You know what I mean? We would have hung out with our family, you know, and at birthdays and holidays and whatever else. But we were she was 13 and I was 18. We were about to have completely separate social lives.
Those are the two identity shifts.
Yeah. And I'm so grateful that we had excuses to hang out all the time for, you know, the next 10 years. It's been awesome. So it's kind of about like, I don't know, the scrutiny that she's been under the whole time. And, you know, I remember like 22, I remember how it feels to be 22 much more. It's much closer to how I feel at 27 than 13, which was like when we started. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and yet there's still that beautiful observation where you're only 22 and there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
Those two lines alone are just so powerful, because what I love about songwriting is I think the great ones, they can present themselves within a couple of words or a couple of lines in a song, and you can kind of take the essence of it and be like, wow, everything's built around that. And I think the protective nature of it, even though you're only a few years older than her still and you've got so much life to live, it really speaks volumes in terms of I guess this unspoken sense of protectiveness that you've both done a very good job of kind of shielding from all of us, this idea of like, we're celebrating together and we're creating together and we're doing wonderful things together, but it's been a crazy ride. And, you know, in that moment right there, when you say those two lines, you really show your hand in terms of your true nature and how you truly feel. And it's really lovely.
Well, thank you. That means a lot. Yeah. I mean, that was that was probably the song that was the most overwhelming to write on this album, because I think it's the one that is the most meaningful to me from a subject matter.
You know, it's at a point of separation where that thing that was going to happen when you were 18 and 13, to some degree,
sure,
it's happening.
She's about to go on tour.
She's going on tour
without me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I think the preface there is, if I had a time machine, I'd be at every show and also tour myself. You know, that's the kind of the thing I would preface that with. It's like, I have no desire to quit or something. It's just a kind of a matter of like scheduling.
You can't quit. You're a brother.
Yeah,
exactly. There's no quitting.
And I'll still come to as many shows as I can. But yeah, I mean, it just makes sense. And, you know, she is, you know, it's like going off to college, right? She's an adult. You know, she was the first several years of touring, she's like literally underage. I'm not going anywhere. You know what I mean? It's only at this age, and only at the age that she now is, that I sort of feel like okay about it. And also, I was just saying this to like my friend the other day, like, if she calls me 5 weeks in and is like, I can't, you need to be here, I'll quit everything and go do that. I have confidence that that won't happen. I think she's going to have like a beautiful experience with her friends and her band, who are great. You know, I think she's just going to have a great time, but I will drop everything and go do it if she needs me.
And it's exciting for you because, I mean, now to your point, you've got this opportunity to weave and dip and come in and come out. It's family. It never goes away. But when you break the spell a little bit, you get to say, hey, but now I get to focus on things in a different way. When did that really hit you? When did it really hit you that, like, I guess during the making of this album, that like, okay, I'm not going to, with the best of intentions, be split into 2 or 3 places, trying to make the most of all of them. I can kind of hyper-focus on things I really need to focus on. Yeah,
I think that is a creative luxury, and a thing that, you know, one of the things that's sort of been true in the past was the first several years of touring with Billie, we made a lot of music on the road. We were in vans and, you know, in tiny hotel rooms. Sometimes we'd be like sharing a suite, whatever. And we were hanging out and we'd sit around and write songs. And the show's magnitude has grown so much that her day on tour is pretty disciplined. She sleeps as late as she can to be well rested. She wakes up, she eats something in the hotel. I'll literally see her like elevator down to the lobby, get in a car, go to the venue, and then she's in physical therapy. She does vocal coaching. She eats like healthy, clean food for the show, make sure she feels good. So like the 2 times I'd see her a day were like elevator ride and then like fist bumping right before the show, because she needs that time she's like an athlete. She needs that time to prep. And so that just meant that we stopped writing on the road. I would say that like we might have written 1% of Hit Me Hard and Soft on the road. I think we wrote a little bit of the song Bittersweet on the road, and that's it. And everything else was written at home. So what it meant was like we'd tour, then the schedule shifted to like we'd tour for months and months, and we'd come home and we'd make an album. And so then it was like, if I'm supposed to score a TV show or work on anyone else's album, it's like kind of never time to do that. So it's like, I think that the beautiful thing here is going to be like, she'll be on tour and I'll be doing whatever. And the second she comes home, I can clear everything and make a Billy album, which I'm also really excited about.
Yeah, because you guys made your best one last time, and as I said, it was a really important creative statement, I think, for both of you.
Thanks. It's very nice of you to say.
I mean, I've told you, and I think you both know it. I know how proud you both are of that record.
We're really proud of it. Yeah.
Yeah, because it just the growth.
This
is it's the perfect album at this moment in your life, because now it's like, okay, we're going to grow in every way.
Sure.
We're not just going to grow creatively. We're going to grow individually. We're going to grow as a team, as a family feud, as a brother and sister.
Yeah.
Big growth, big growth, big growth.
Yeah.
One of my favorite songs on this, while we're staying in a sort of more reflective space, is Little Window. And I just wanted to ask you about that one, because I love it when you get into a place where I know how good you are at producing music, and I know how tasteful this is on a production level and an arrangement level. But sometimes when I just hear you do something in a slightly more reduced way, I'm like reminded that as a performer and a songwriter,
that's very sweet of you.
That is also your natural habitat.
Thanks. I mean, as a song, I think that song has a lot to do with the For You page, and I think it's probably the hardest it's ever been not to get apathetic. We're just seeing such extreme highs and really brutal extreme lows, and often it's like a thing that you like literally cannot help at all. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like some endangered species on an iceberg with a, whatever. It's like, it's horrible to sort of watch and feel helpless.
It's a doom scroll of helplessness.
It feels helpless, yeah. And then the good stuff you can kind of vicariously be sort of happy for whatever the positive thing you're seeing is, the hope core, but not really, because then you'd be opening yourself up to be like a, open, exposed nerve for all the tragedy and horror. So, that song really is just kind of about like that feeling of like looking at this sort of crystal ball in your hand and seeing like all that the world has to offer in terms of everything, and then kind of closing it and going back to like whatever your physical body is in that day, which is like, who knows? That line of like, you're like, try to have a nice day, not a cloud in the sky, and you're still alive, but you don't feel that way, or you don't look that way. It's like, it's just a weird period to be alive. And then, you know what? Like, I don't mean to knock it, because then when I talk to people who are like, I'm not on the apps at all, I'm like, you're out of touch in a huge way.
Yeah. No, there's no
Those
way.
people are like hard to have conversations with.
It's true, because I've tried to find more balance there, and there are days I feel unaffected by not being so attached to it.
Sure.
And then there are days where I'm like, whoa, I need to catch up. I need to play a role here. This is crazy. What am I missing out on? It's not even so much as fear of missing out. It's actually like real important life stuff. I'm like, wait, what just happened?
I know.
And I've always wondered what the kind of impact of the doom scroll of helplessness has kind of had. And I think you've summed it up really lovely, or at least started the conversation or deepened it a bit with Little Window on the artistic spirit, which is by its very nature a wide open curiosity machine searching for things to translate and write about. Yeah. And that's a big one.
Yeah, I mean,
what do you do with that helplessness? How do you even translate it? Well, I guess you did.
How do you fight the overexposure of like, this is really morbid, but like, I remember hearing about Columbine as a child, it's like an 8-year-old or something. And I remember being so haunted just hearing about it. And it's like, we've all seen it. We've seen many now. We've seen like we find out real time that the crazy shooting is like we find out about Uvalde real time. The guy's in there. It's very haunting, you know. I mean, and not to go too ridiculous, but it's also like what's the thing that all the politicians always say, like, now's not the time to talk about this. It's like, well, then let's talk about it right now, because it didn't happen this morning. Correct. I don't think so. Let's talk about it right now. But anyway,
as someone at this point in your life at 27 who's come through the end of the end of an era of like anything is possible. Shit.
Yeah.
We just achieved a whole lot of what I never thought was actually possible.
Oh my God. So far exceeded my solo career has exceeded all of Billie and my expectations for her career. To give you some perspective on like how far surpassed our dreams all of her music has gone. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You come through that though, and you take stock. All that hard work adds up to something, which is ultimately the objective was to be able to make music for the rest of your life and survive. So you did that.
100%.
So you've done that.
I mean, that still feels like the aspirational thing because I have my whole life ahead of me, hopefully.
Yeah. Way ahead of schedule. Congrats.
But the long game is still, to me, requires work always. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I don't feel like that's some foregone conclusion.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm getting to is like, okay, so on a personal level, everything's kind of working out. But then around you, it's still chaos. And, and I sort of like, your job is to try to feel that and translate that to some degree, right? When you feel it, not for us, but for yourself, and then it helps us. So, you know, just how is it kind of, what's the muscle like as a songwriter when you see what's going on in the world and you're trying to make sense of it? Because I know you write from third person too. You don't just write from your own perspective. You're observational.
When I made my first album, I think I was like David, who worked on this whole album with me, and I always joke about like having a kind of a particular aversion to songs that have all the answers. I think it's a kind of a arrogant place to write a song from. And usually they don't have all the answers. They kind of act like they do. I think I was a little guilty of it on my last album, and I wasn't trying to be that way, but I think like that album was like me looking out over a town and singing about it. And this album, I was like, I want to sit across the table from people and talk right to them, and not be preachy at all. So anything like Little Window, for example, like, you know, you compare that to a song on the first album that's like The Kids Are All Dying, which is about the same thing basically, but it's a kind of a like wide gesture. And Little Window is like really about my relationship with, you know, humanity through social media. So I, you know, trying to get to a place where I can be more forthcoming about like how it is for me specifically, and worry less about how it is for everybody, or trying to be sort of universally intelligent, which I'm not, you know.
I disagree with that. How hard is it to write a great love song?
It's not, I would say it's, first of all, this is a pretty love song light album. And that was kind of by accident. I mean, the song right before this album is called Mona Lisa, Mona Lisa, and that was about Claudia. And there's a lot of Claudia woven through the fabric of this album. But I think that I'm kind of always looking at the thing I'm making from a perspective of what's come before, to not be too repetitive. And so I think like I knew that I wanted this to be a 10-song album, and I had these kind of concepts coming to me like Little Window and Cleats and whatever else. So I just didn't concern myself as much with like, I'm going to write a straight ahead love song, which I've done like many, many times.
Which is why I asked, because to me, it feels like there's some teeth in this record in the writing. There's a sense of sort of self-awareness and accountability that flows through this. It comes with age, and the idea of like, okay, even in the best of relationships, be it friendships or personal relationships, I have to acknowledge that I'm flawed, they're flawed, there's flaws everywhere. So the flaws are really present on this record.
There's a lot of
some real love songs, like outright love songs.
The most lovey, the most true to form love song on this album is Family Feud by, you know, a lot. And that's obviously not about romantic love. It's about whatever it is, familial love. Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that I set out to do on this album was to kind of write these like argument songs that are not that are not kind of like heartbreak songs. They're just kind of like that's a big part of the fabric of, just like you're saying, of friendship, of relationships, is kind of loving somebody through a kind of a disagreement.
And also acknowledging your role in it.
Yes,
mean,
100%.
Like Starfuck. I mean, the whole premise of the album, to me as a fan, listening to it, starts off with that sense of like, listen, you know, I'm not that much fun to be around. I get it. I don't know if I missed the point, but
I'm so tightly wound. That's really funny. Yeah, I mean, that song, that's a good example of like, and
how does that make you feel, knowing you've got something out of your off your chest that served only one side of that particular dynamic?
I mean, I feel relieved. That's a version of talking to a therapist about it, or explaining it to a friend without kind of like throwing another person under the bus. And the person that there's truth and there's fiction in that song, but the person who the truth is about is like, they're a human being, you know, that they're not just the narrative antagonist of that song. It's okay, you know. Has
it surprised you how much bullshittery exists in this industry as well, and how it's for all of the patting on the back and the smiles and the congratulations and everything that goes on, that it's all just a fucking playground at the end of the day sometimes, you know what I mean? Like, there's genuine and then there's real disingenuine, and it's just a strange thing because it's a funny industry, and I'm not looking for doxing here, but it is a funny, fuck it, man, I've been in it for a long, long time, and it's amazing how good we all are at smiling.
So funny. So true. My favorite version of like the industry, so to speak, is being at a festival. That's, to me, I think if you want to be in music, that's what your fantasy is about it. Being in the backstage compound, and
everyone's happy because everyone gets to perform.
You see somebody that you've maybe met before because you've met on the road or something, and you have a nice conversation, and then some other artist walks over and maybe you're a fan and you get to be like, dude, I'm such a fan of yours. Like, that's pretty spectacular. It's
pure.
It's much more pure than being at a other thing. Yeah, it's very pure because everybody's doing that. I wasn't. I knew I wasn't safe. I knew I wasn't coming in and not getting.
But the bar's very high for you now, because we've spoken many times, and I'm becoming more generous with the bombs in my old age. You know what I mean? I drop them on quite a few things.
Sure.
So you would have a problem with that. As someone who keeps me honest, you would be like, you might say to me next time I'm in your kitchen,
I don't know if that's a bomb.
Didn't think that needed a bomb.
I think that's a funny bomb.
Well, it's a good bomb because
that's a huge explosion sound, by the way.
Yeah, I stole it from another DJ.
But what do you think? Okay, I did some music tangent. I did some music for Call of Duty last year with David. I just love Call of Duty, and I tweeted.
Are you a gamer?
Yeah, I tweeted like, I want to score Call of Duty, and they were like, bet. And
you brat.
And so I went and
such a brat thing to do. I want to go. Dude, I'm loving this game. Let me just put this out in the social media thing. Like, yo, I love this game. I'd love to do something. Somebody call Finn.
I only did like 10 minutes of music. It was amazing, not. I mean, like scoring. The people that scored those games.
Could you do that
so
now?
incredible.
Like, okay, sidebar on sidebar.
Sure.
If we just decided that, like, at some point you wanted to, like, we could just make anything up, and you could just go on Twitter and be like, oh man, I'm so thirsty. I could really do with a fucking Gatorade right now. Do you reckon someone's gonna like whip you? At least call you up and go. Sit. In 2 weeks, you're gonna get like 24 Gatorades on your front door.
Shall we find out? But listen to how big that explosion is. That's such a big explosion sound. Okay, so I tweet this thing, and they take me in for a meeting, me and David. And we go in, and we think maybe they're going to like... we think maybe they're going to explain like what the next game is about, or give us a kind of a brief, or we're going to listen to some music. They showed us 2 hours of blowing stuff up with RPGs. That was why it was these two cool guys. It was Steven, and it was a guy named Jonathan Mayer. So funny.
Hilarious.
And
so funny when
we sat there for 2 hours, and they were like, check this out. And they would like pull up on their computer, like a video of a guy like shooting.
That's how they're getting inspired.
And we'd sit there for 2 hours, and we'd be like, sick. Like, that was our meeting. And then they showed us, so all the gun sounds in those games are like, they mic up people doing like all the reload and stuff. And they had like a photo. It's like the funniest photo I've ever seen of a guy with like a bazooka sitting in like an orchestra chair at like Abbey Road or something. He's holding a bazooka, and there's all these mics on his bazooka, and he's going like, he's reloading. I was like, this is crazy. But that explosion sound is crazy.
In the George Martin Studio A.
Probably, yeah. Doing it in Atmos. So funny.
Appreciate that.
I have nothing to say about that sound. I don't have an anecdote.
About Atmos? We'd appreciate it if you would. You're a gamer. Fuck, I didn't see that.
Yeah, in a very casual. I don't want to misrepresent.
Did you do any
myself.
work? You did 5 hours a day in the studio. You just told me you just played Call of Duty. Like, you're kind of entering into your like feet up phase.
Getting lazier.
A little bit.
Getting lazier. Yeah, for sure.
Getting better.
Okay. Hey, I like that.
Getting better, right? I mean, sure.
Which one is it?
It's that one. Can you do it?
I can't reach it. I'd have to climb all over the table.
Right.
Do that.
Might be the first time I've dropped one by proxy.
I almost crawled across the table for you.
Yeah, we got a good shot of that. What else do you do with your life when you're not making music and playing games?
I like a hike. I like to cook.
We're in a good city. Oh, what do you cook?
I would say like my favorite cuisine to cook is like great Mediterranean recipes, great homemade baba ganoush, pretty exciting.
Yes, I would. Thank you. Anytime. How do you do it in a way that, do you find it relaxing or stressful?
So relaxing.
I find it so stressful.
I find shopping stressful.
Interesting.
Like I find you look up the recipe and there's some ingredient that you're like, ooh, and then you go to a store and you ask the employee, like, do you have this? And they're like, I don't think we do. And then you have to go to 3 other stores. I find that all pretty annoying.
Yeah.
But if I have the ingredients and my kitchen's getting steamy and I have some music on, that's pretty blissful. I love that. And I love cooking with friends too. Like that's a really fun friend activity.
With friends? You mean like a Coke ad? Like everyone's just throwing things across the kitchen at each other and one's like peppering it and the other person's like...
You're fronting like you don't cook with friends, and I know you do, and I know you cook.
At all.
Oh, are you one of those? You never cook?
I wish I could. I find it so stressful. I wasn't kidding. It's an anxiety trigger for me.
What's stressful about it to you?
Shit burns, baby.
Cooking for the right amount of time.
What is that?
Whatever the recipe says, dude.
What does that mean?
It's like simmer in the frying pan for 5 minutes or until golden brown.
5 minutes. And what is a simmer? How do you know what a simmer is?
Bro.
Not a simmer.
AI is great for this, dude. Check it out. It's the only time, by the way, the difference between cooking and feeling like you are a cook.
Wait, do you feel like you're a cook?
No, I'm mostly cooking because mostly I'm like looking up a recipe and looking up a thing.
Feel like you're
when
a
I
cook.
feel like a cook is when I'm like, I open the fridge and I see what's in there and I'm like, I know what I could make with this. And I create a sort of a...
You're songwriting through the kitchen.
I'm songwriting. That's right. That's when I feel like a cook.
You gonna tour?
I'm going to tour.
You're gonna fucking tour. You said that like you're going out on a world tour.
I'm going out on a world tour. Yeah.
That's crazy. So you're like, I don't want to tour. I'm gonna tour.
No, it's not that I don't want to tour. I just couldn't do 2 tours at the same time. I couldn't do all of Billy's shows and all of mine.
And I would guess you've never felt like you've had the time to do a proper committed FINNEAS world tour.
Oh, I straight up haven't. I mean, I've toured extensively with Billy. In between those tours, I've made albums with Billy and I've made my own stuff. But the idea of like doing a months-long tour with Billy and then like turning around and doing the same tour again feels insane.
So this is super exciting because now you get to go out with your friends and your band.
Well, and I get to play this music and just sing it and stuff. I'm really excited. And also like I think tour, you know, this sounds kind of like annoying to say, but I really feel this way. And I think if you asked almost all musicians, they would concur. Like tour feels like the thing you do the most for your audience. Like I really make records for me. You know what I mean? I make records for me. I make music videos for me. I do art direction for me, you know? I think that like I do the tour for the audience member. I do the tour for the person who loved the album. Because it's a schlep. It's like it's a flight or a long drive. It's setting up and practicing and performing and putting on a show.
Well, it's also the chance for us as fans to go and become the artists. We sing the songs back at you.
100%.
We feel them in front of you.
Yeah, 100%. But I think, you know, just for the record, like the people that have liked my solo music for several years now that have been like, hey, you've never come to Europe. It's like, I hear you. I want to come. I want to be there.
When do you start?
January.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
So you're going to tour pretty much all 25.
I'm touring a lot. Yeah.
That's so exciting, dude. And like I said, you know, I know your friends in your band.
Yeah, you do.
It's a good crowd.
It's going to be fun.
You're going to eat so much good food.
This is true. And so much bad food. Traveling is like combo every couple days you're having like an extravagant meal, and then in between those are like dog shit. In between those are like airport lounge hummus. It's so bad.
Do you eat the food on a plane?
No, never.
Neither.
I never eat the food on the plane. I have a friend, Daniel, who is a chef, and he's an incredible chef, and he's from Switzerland. And I said to him, because he travels a fair amount, I go, you know, you're such an incredible chef, and sometimes you go to cities or parts of the world where like the food is pretty bad. And I said to Daniel, I was like, how do you travel to like places with bad food as a chef? Do you know what I mean? And he goes, I don't go there.
It just cut off.
He's like, I don't go there. And
that's it. Cut off.
I'm gonna give you a call about that one.
You think it was too much?
I don't think that one was necessary.
Just want to wrap it up.
Just trying to get you out of here, dude.